let's get into this. Now, my first listen, here's how I do things when I'm listening to Jerry. I listen to it like 3 times per episode. I'll do one episode, Coach Colin here, sold not for sale. I do one episode at 3 times speed. Second time is at 2 times speed. And then the third time, if there's one, I'll do it at just normal speed, like 1.5 or something like that. So my first listen to this episode, Eric Weinstein, Terrence Howard, I did not catch this. But near the end of the episode, Terrence Howard calls out Neil deGrasse Tyson. And Eric puts a stop to it. He says, this is my colleague. I don't want to do it like this. This is not serving. I want to hear the ideas. We don't need to do this, right? Then all of a sudden, later in the episode, Eric just goes, Neil was so disingenuous, and could you pull up what I have prepared? This guy prepared a diss for Neil deGrasse Tyson. What? I did not catch this. So this is what we're going to be listening to right now. And it kind of uncovers some things about peer-reviewed studies. Now, I think a lot of us over the past 4 or 5 years, we have grown very wary of when people bring up peer-reviewed studies and the experts say, and, all of that stuff. We've grown very wary and very distrusting of that. And Eric Weinstein points out that we should be distrusting of this, while calling out Neil deGrasse Tyson is very disingenuous. Let's get into this, man.
Because most people, they have a good face.
Terrence, let me ask you a question. Have I been fair to you this time?
You've been amazingly fair.
Okay.
You've been very kind.
Uniformly? No, I haven't been uniformly kind.
You have. You've been honest.
Well, you're talking to me about my heart is open to you.
No,
right?
You've actually talked about the things that I've talked about.
That's right.
You've given me criticism on things where I've made mistakes. You've told me where
this is
I've
not available as
people.
a service in academics.
I know.
In academics, basically, it's a closed little world, and if you don't come with protection, we stab you in the eye. This idea that Neil said about why doesn't he just submit to peer review? It's the biggest bunch of shit I've ever heard.
We've got 2 papers, the geometry of the proton. Did you get to see that?
Can we pull up the Neil stuff on that I prepared on that page? Because I cannot believe how disingenuous this is. He calls you the worst insult in academics, which is there was a study called Dunning-Kruger
effect.
Is both an effect that is studied and the ultimate insult. It's basically your mama, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just click on that and see what happens.
So I spent a lot of time on it, and I thought, out of respect for him, what I should do is give him my most informed critical analysis that I can. In my field, we call that a peer review. You come up with an idea, you present it either at a conference or you first write it up, and you send it to your colleagues. It is their duty to alert you of things about your ideas that are either misguided or wrong, or there's the calculation that doesn't work out, or the logic doesn't comport. That's their job. Not all ideas will turn out to be correct. Most won't be. But to get to that point, you need to know things like, what has everyone else said about this same subject? Am I repeating someone else's work? Is this a new insight that no one else has had, but has foundations that are authentic or legitimate or objectively true? Am I making a false assumption? Am I making an assumption that someone else has already shown to be false? All of this goes on the frontier of science. Let me make it clear that I'm delighted when I see people with active minds trying to tackle the great unknowns in the universe. It's a beautiful thing that people want to participate on this frontier. What can happen is, if you're a fan of a subject, let's say, a hobbyist, let's call it, it's possible to know enough about that subject to think you're right, but not enough about that subject to know that you're wrong. And so there's this sort of valley in there, a valley of false confidence. This has been studied by others, and it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the phenomenon where a little bit of knowledge, you over-assess how much of that subject you actually know. And then when you learn even more, you realize, no, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So then there's a sort of a lull there. And then when you learn even more, you come back up. Ultimately, learning enough to know whether you were right or wrong. To become an expert means you spend all this time. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just sit in an armchair and say, I'm now an expert. It requires years and years of study, especially looking through journals where new ideas are published and contested. That's what we have learned is the most effective means of establishing that which is objectively true, or determining that which is objectively false. Both of those work hand in hand to move the needle on our understanding of the universe. I'm going to read you just my opening line here. It's titled 1 × 1 = 2.
Okay.
So I lead off.
So that was now if we go below that, what do we have? Is that, let's try that.
Hi, Sir Arthur Eddington, an astrophysicist, provided the first experimental evidence for Einstein's general theory of relativity, which, by the way, was published in a peer-reviewed journal. Crazy idea. The platform to be accepted for the ideas is not social media. It is not Joe Rogan. It is not my podcast. It is research journals where attention can be given on a level that at the end of the day offers no higher respect for your energy and intellect than by declaring that what's in it is either right or wrong or worthy of publication or not. I wanted to post this to my website so you can see my comments mixed in with his treatise, but you got a sense of it. Thanks for listening.
Okay. I want to be very careful about my words. Is there anything below that we've put together? This is, let's go above. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson, just so you don't feel bad about yourself, talking about me and my theories based on a question in an Ask Me Anything. Will you be able to talk to Eric Weinstein about the new theory of geometric unity? This is from 2013. We are all wondering about that. Cosmos is not your normal talking head documentary. In fact, it's the feature of the original that enabled the series to live for an entire generation beyond the shelf life of hundreds of other science documentaries that came afterwards. So the answer is no. Let me explain where you are. Neil is not unaware that you are never going to get your hearing in a peer-reviewed journal. Your ideas are going to come through. You're a self-taught, autodidact polymath. You haven't been cleaned up. You haven't been taught how to speak properly. You don't know the fact that when you say loop, we know fixed point. I know how to do all this stuff, right? You're not getting a peer review from me. I know a lot more than you do about a lot of this stuff. You're getting an elite review. And my elite review says that a lot of this is bathwater, but a small amount of this is baby. And that's not available anywhere. It's not available in a university. It's not available in a journal. That's available on the Joe Rogan Experience. And Neil's right. If what you want is peer review, you should go to a journal and they will laugh you out. They will take one look at your email address. And if it doesn't end in .edu, I promise you're not going to get hurt.
Do me a favor, Jamie. Can you pull
up?
Let
him finish.
Hold on,
let him finish because this is a sustained thought.
Let's go below where we just were, Jamie. I don't think Neil deGrasse Tyson actually knows the history of peer review. This is Google Ngrams, and it tracks how often a phrase is found in the corpus of English language books published in the world. Peer review basically begins in the mid-1960s. Now, there were various forms of review. Editors, in particular, were very distinguished individuals who were chosen to not peer review things, to simply take a look at things and see who should be published and who should be not. Can we bring that back up? More or less, from what I can piece together, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who started Pergamon Press, destroyed...
Jeffrey Epstein's Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, correct. He figured out how to destroy science and make a fortune by blowing out the number of journals and forcing every university to subscribe to every journal that he could figure out how to publish, because to not subscribe to all of the journals required an admission that you had an incomplete library. So he diluted the quality of the editorship of the leading journals. This was a very informal, high-quality enterprise. Now, most of the destruction of science, in terms of how high quality it used to be, has taken place relatively recently, post-Robert Maxwell. Because now we have an enormous number of journals staffed by people who can't spot publication cartels where we agree to cite each other's work and we agree to publish stuff, pay for play. All of the nonsense that you see with irreproducible research comes after this peer review thing. The peer review thing got woven in so that people think that the scientific method and peer review are effectively the same thing, where one is an unwanted infection from the biomedical universe, which had peer review much longer than everything else. Neil is giving you a very cursory back of the hand brush off. Okay?
I felt it.
All right. I'm here because I love this man, and this is a higher quality environment. We have to sort out what happened with Tony Fauci and the origin of COVID. I was very distressed when Joe was sort of credulously accepting everything that you were saying at a level where he did say, look, I can't evaluate this. He was letting you have your piece. Joe has established an extraordinary thing where he can call on a Roger Penrose. He can call on all sorts of amazing people.
He called on you.
Well, he has lapses in judgment, but he has his good quality. My point being that this is actually what science was supposed to be. We were supposed to listen to each other, not go after each other with an ice pick to the eye. We were supposed to try to figure out the best version. Remember at the beginning of this where I was trying to say, look, I want to do the best version of your idea and build it up.
So what you're saying, though, can I just summarize this? What you're saying is that Neil deGrasse's understanding of peer review is flawed.
Sure.
And that it is not really available to someone like Terrence.
It really isn't. He knows that. You see, peer review is not one thing. One thing peer review is the ability to get rid of the axe murderer who's just wandered into your office with a manuscript in red crayon.
Well, while you guys are talking this, I've got to run.
Man, holy, I can't play much more than that, but I will tell you what Eric Weinstein was saying after that. He was talking about peer-reviewed study, and he was talking about how peer-reviewed, it's basically establishment versus non-establishment. He also said that it can lock in a bad idea for 40 plus years once something becomes peer-reviewed, because I guess there's almost like a protection to it once that happens. It's almost like the term that we've heard over the past 4 years, widely accepted kind of thing. It's like, well, there's a bunch of people, it's been peer reviewed. So this somebody who's just as smart as me or even smarter who understands, they've also seen this and they understand. He also said that it's been weaponized again. There have been people, not even that, this is not a theory of his. He's saying there have been people who have come forward who have admitted that they weaponized peer-reviewed studies against their younger colleagues. Man, so all that, before I go on, all that right there, that's all gatekeeping. And basically what Eric is admitting right now is that Neil deGrasse Tyson was actually gatekeeping against Terrence Howard. It was a very disingenuous, very passive-aggressive way of, I'm going to tell you that you're completely wrong, which, be clear, Eric did go on to say that Neil was right, but him suggesting that you go through the peer-reviewed process, that's where he becomes disingenuous because he knows that's not really available to Terrence. So, but he was gatekeeping. He understood that I'm going to tell you to do this, and you're not going to be able to get through that gate. You don't have the keys. I'm not even going to tell you that there are keys needed for this gate. I'm just going to send you over there, and it's like a wall to you. That's incredible that Eric Weinstein is willing to actually admit that, because at the beginning of the episode, he's like, Neil's my colleague, and I don't want anything to happen. You know, I don't want to say these things about my colleague. But then he actually, he prepared a whole thing with clips and little things. Oh, man. And then also kind of gave a little jab at Neil to show, like, you remember when you said you couldn't actually keep up with me and discuss my theories. Remember that. Wow. Neil deGrasse Tyson has become Bill Nye the Science Guy. Full blown. Although he is very intelligent in his own right. We can't deny that, no matter how we feel about his stance on, other things. So he went on to say that Neil was right, but he was disingenuous. But then also says there are some things that Terrence has said that he's brought up in these theories that are actually promising. He goes on to say that a lot of it, the whole term throw out the baby with the bathwater, or don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. He says most of what Terrence is saying is bathwater, which means that it's nonsense, it's not true, it's not right. This is all no. But he says there's some baby. That is amazing. See, this is exactly what I was talking about. I was saying when it came to Terrence Howard, it's been years and he's made no progress. He's talked to Uganda. They completely didn't understand. It's not even that they didn't understand. They have their own scientists. Uganda's not, it's in Africa, but don't think poorly of Uganda. They have their own scientists. They have their own incredibly intelligent people who were able to poke holes in what Terrence was saying. So they shoot him away. But I was saying The difference between Graham Hancock and Terrence Howard is that Graham Hancock made progress year after year. He was proving his assertions. And now Terrence Howard, because of Eric Weinstein and because of Joe Rogan, is actually proving a very small amount of his assertions, but proving them nonetheless. This is going to be progress. Even if he has to throw away most of what he's saying, that's still good because some of it will be actual. And if he can move forward with what's actual and what's right and what's true to someone like Eric Weinstein, and then that gets into the scientific community, well, now we're rolling. Now he's actually doing something. And can we just say real quick that Robert Maxwell had something to do with peer-reviewed studies coming into play? Do you know how crazy that is? Because, listen, I've already done an episode on this, whether people know it or not. Robert Maxwell was the successor to Jeffrey Epstein. I don't care what anybody says. They did the exact same thing with surrounding themselves with scientists and well-to-do people, and they even passed away the same. As before things were about to hit the fan, they both passed away out of nowhere. I think those two gentlemen were agents, 100%. Just very, very interesting stuff. Eric Weinstein, a mensch, if you don't know what the word mensch means, you could look at Eric Weinstein doing this for Terrence Howard. He was a complete mensch. This is amazing. And he also let him know, like, hey, like, this is an elite review. I know a lot more than you do, okay? Like, don't try and teach me things. Which somebody needed to say to Terrence. I can't say it because Terrence can teach me things, but Eric can say it. Very interesting stuff. Neil deGrasse Tyson gets called out. I think soon we're going to see a Neil deGrasse Tyson episode with Joe Rogan. Maybe because Eric Weinstein and Joe have a better relationship. Now Terrence Howard and Joe have a better relationship than Neil deGrasse Tyson does with Joe. So maybe we'll see an episode. Maybe we'll see another response from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Or maybe he's going to run into his hole because now it's not just him talking to Terrence Howard where he can just be like, red. Now, all of a sudden, it's Eric Weinstein. And Eric Weinstein is no one to play with. Very interesting stuff. At the very least, what I'm hoping to see from this for Terrence Howard is that he gets to have Eric Weinstein as a mentor, as someone who can tell him, this is wrong. Forget about this. This is wrong. Go with this math. Stop telling people 1 × 1 is 2. Just come with us into the community properly. I think that'll bring about great progress for Terrence Howard. But Neil deGrasse Tyson, like I said in the last episode, catching all sorts of strays. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see his response. Guys, let me know what you think. He was gatekeeping. I kind of thought so because Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's clearly bought and paid for with the rants that he's gone on in the past 18 months. Clearly bought and paid for. But the fact that he was legitimately gatekeeping someone who could have some good ideas for the community is terrible. Just terrible. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Helps the channel tremendously. Other than that, I'm out.